Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Skin Talk Tuesday podcast. Hi, Nick.
Hi.
And hi, Diana.
Hi.
Oh my gosh, our first guest on Skin Talk Tuesday. First of all, let's just acknowledge
the new milestone.
It's so exciting. Everyone, we have Diana Orchant from Do Nutrition. I'm so excited. It just makes sense to have you here.
You know what? You totally took the words out of my mouth. When I was thinking about the fact she's the first person here, I'm like, why wouldn't she be? She's been such a huge, dramatic change to our business.
No, seriously. Well, Diana, she is our go-to for all things nutrition, gut health, wellness, registered dietitian, correct?
Yes.
And we're so excited to have you. We refer pretty much all of our clients to you and your team. And you seriously, I feel like the combo between PT and the Do Nutrition team seriously is like magic. So I'm so excited to have you.
I'm so excited to be here.
This is amazing.
Echo all of your sentiments. You guys have changed the game for Diana Orchant Nutrition as well.
Oh my gosh.
I feel like we're actually changing the industry, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know it sounds a little obnoxious, but I just know myself that for years now, there's always been something missing. It's either you go the holistic route or the medical route, but there hasn't been that integrative marriage of understanding. And I think when you and I connected, that's when the magic happened and the light bulb went off for us, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
well, how did you guys connect? Like, where did that start?
Where all good things start, Mary.
Oh,
in the PT treatment
Oh my God.
room.
Okay. Amazing.
It was that I'm right? Like, it was when you came to me as a client. Like, we were.
Yes.
That's how it started?
Yes. It's actually the perfect scenario when I think about it, because I felt like I had done everything internally, right?
Yeah.
My gut was healed. My hormones were in a good place and my skin just wasn't there. And I had been getting a lot of facials and I just was honestly using all the wrong products, going to the wrong people. I showed up on your table and it was such a game changer for me personally, because I walked out and I kid you not, within weeks, my skin was really different. And I remember my mom being like, whoa, your skin is actually clear. And
I love that.
It really made such a big difference. And then from
that
I was like,
that's been the problem the whole time, is that even just in an innocent way, I think if you go to holistic practitioners that aren't skin experts, they tend to recommend all plant oils. And, you know, the misunderstanding is that non-toxic or green beauty is safe for acne, and that's not actually true.
Yes.
You know, or you go dermatologist route and you miss the gut stuff and all of the other things, and there isn't enough emphasis on skincare. So it is like, I mean, even though it can feel overwhelming to someone, you've got to get all the parts of the puzzle, right?
yes.
There's so much. Well, let's go back to your background. How did you even get into this field? What brought you here, especially when it comes to functional nutrition?
Yeah. So I could honestly have been my own client, and I was looking for someone like myself, which is how I got
Always
here.
how it starts.
Right?
Yeah.
So I majored in business in college. I worked at American Express for years. And throughout this entire journey, I was looking to get to the root cause of my autoimmunity, of my hormonal imbalances. And I was working with functional providers. I was working with conventional providers. And what I felt like I needed was somebody who could really get deep with me and figure out different aspects of hormones, different aspects of my gut, different aspects of my diet, and really do the nitty gritty, meet with me every few weeks instead of every few months, and really know the person, right?
Yeah.
So I was working at American Express. I was like, oh, I'll just become a health coach, do this on the side.
Right.
And what happened was I realized that was not giving me the information that I needed.
Yeah.
So I made this really big, somewhat scary career switch. I left American Express, went back to school, became a registered dietitian, but that was a bit more conventional, but also insanely helpful.
How long does it take to become a registered dietitian?
It can take, you kind of have to do it. It's a very strange career path, honestly, because it's all undergrad.
Okay.
So I kind of had to repeat.
I was going to say, like, even just you deciding to do that, not many people would do. A lot of people, I think, would just go to like an integrative health coaching,
which is where I started.
Class or whatever. Yeah. But like to actually do the work and to go back to school and be a registered dietitian, like that's a huge deal that I don't think people really realize.
Yeah, no, it was. There's no question.
Sure,
and I doubted myself
felt
along the way, right?
Yeah.
I was super unsure if this was the right move. You know, how was I going to get clients? What was I even going to do?
Mm-hmm.
But I think kind of my own journey was in the back of my head. And I was working at a clinic at the time, a functional medicine clinic that was doing exactly what I wanted to do, which I tell everybody, like, find what you want to do and get yourself in the door. So I did that while I was back at school becoming a registered dietitian. And then I wanted to get my master's. So I left to get my master's at the University of Western States and got a master's in functional medicine and human nutrition. And that was, I think, where I kind of got to actually blend conventional and functional medicine together, which was kind of always my end goal.
Right.
My dad's a doctor. I think conventional medicine is incredible, but I also think that it focuses so heavily on sick care, and we need to focus on health care and keep people healthy, right?
Oh my
so
gosh.
we talk a lot about this gray area, and that's kind of the area that I wanted to address. But yeah, that's kind of how I got here.
I think that that's so important, and why I feel so aligned whenever we've worked together, because we like started working together, I think in like early 2023. I was obviously, you know, a client of yours and then working at PT, but I could just tell that there was something deeper. And then we started working together, and like, that's really what I wanted. Because I too was also, you know, obviously understanding that conventional medicine is so important and to consider that side, but then also like, how can we marry the two with functional? So it was just the best.
Well, I think
the best
issue
match
too that I've always seen is that often people are told that they're okay when you're seeing signs that they're not. That's what always confused me. Like, I would have clients come through that had obvious hormonal imbalances or symptoms, you know, missing periods, that sort of thing. They'd go and get conventional, like go to an appointment and be told that they were okay. So I think that's when I started looking broader too, as far as like, how can I get help for clients for things that are just right in my face, but I'm not qualified to be able to help them with it, but I know it's the missing link to what's happening for them with their skin. You know,
100%.
why is that, Diana? Like, why do people get told that, you know, say the hormonal example, like, why is the testing in conventional medicine different from functional?
Yeah, it's multi-pronged, honestly. And so one reason is that the right tests are not always being run.
Yeah.
Right. So if you come in and you say, I have a hormonal imbalance, often estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone are run. And while those might be a clear indicator, and I'm sure you've seen some of your clients have success, it may not, right? That's not looking at the full picture. We want to see many more markers than that, right?
Yeah.
Also, what's not always being taken into account is, and this kind of falls into the realm of just not enough testing, is that maybe it's a blood sugar imbalance that's throwing off the hormones. Maybe it's a gut issue that's throwing off the hormones, right? It doesn't always begin with the hormones. Other prong is kind of what I alluded to earlier, which is this gray area. So that's this area where, unfortunately, a lot of the labs that we look at today, kind of, as I mentioned, focus on sick care. So they tell you, are you in the range of healthy or sick? And so an issue like acne, right, or an issue like general bloating or gas or digestive discomfort doesn't always fall within an insurance-covered diagnosis.
You said the key word there,
insurance. Yeah, unfortunately, that's a big player.
Yeah.
So that's where this gray area comes in, where you're not sick enough to get a real diagnosis with a medication even that could necessarily solve the answer, or I shouldn't even say medication, and medical intervention that could solve the issue, right? So that gray area comes into play here because you could have so much going on under the surface that is causing a myriad of symptoms that is not actually problematic in the conventional medicine world.
And so it'll just, that actually explains a lot, because I will have clients, like I said before, that say aren't having a regular period, and they'll go to their gyno and just be told, well, are you wanting to have children? And when the person says no, the gyno will say, well, you know, we'll wait and see when you try to have children if there's an issue. Otherwise, you can just go on the pill, you know, and it's that one sort of universal answer that gets schlepped around, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of immediate gratification that gets taken into account, meaning the client often wants immediate gratification. I want this acne gone today, right? And then the doctor also wants to make sure we get to the root of the issue right then and there, right? So, and what no one's thinking about is the longer term. So, okay, you don't want to get pregnant now, but what about in a few years, right? When you want to get off the pill and get pregnant, you need to address that imbalance
Or
now.
also, what is it that's causing this symptom? Because it's obviously something. I mean, I notice with my demographic, stress is huge,
Yes.
hectic schedules. They're all, the skin is just a sign of trying to let you know, slow down, calm down, that sort of thing. So it's almost like we're taught to ignore these subtle signs that aren't overtly hurting us. But what do we get from that?
Right. I mean, I feel like that goes back to our biggest mantra is I am grateful for the messages my skin is sending me, you know, like really
like Mary, how
recognizing
much
that.
have you learned about yourself on this
Oh my
journey
God.
that you wouldn't have thought of?
So
if
much.
you
And it's
hadn't
been
have
so
done
long,
it,
like even, and we'll totally get into it as we talk more, but with the different testing that you do, like the Dutch test for hormones and the GI map test for gut health, like I did those like one year and then one the other year. And it's like, I find out so much within those 2 years, but it's like, that's a long time. And I know that a lot of people don't want to do that. They just want what you were saying before, is that like quick fix. How can I fix this like right now? So, it is like a really interesting kind of sphere. But I do think what I was thinking about when you were talking is like, now we have so much more access to information. Like we know all of these things. I feel like even 15 years ago, like we didn't know to go to, get our hormones checked.
in my time, when I
Right.
was
Like
going
it
through
was just
acne,
like
it was
first thing,
never
like go to
something that was talked
Accutane or
about.
whatever. And now it's like, oh, well, we have all of these different like reasonings or things that we can really look at, especially with the functional side tied in. Like there's just so much more that we know versus before we really didn't. It's just like so interesting.
And what's interesting is that there's never usually one answer.
Never.
Which I think is very different than conventional medicine too.
Right.
It's usually a puzzle that we're putting together, both internal and external factors.
Yeah, and it's like the most difficult puzzle sometimes, but
Yes,
we'll get into it. So let's say that somebody wants to work with you to get to the root cause of their acne. Walk us through what this process looks like in your practice. What would you advise for treatment, and where do we start?
Yes, good question. So the way it would work is typically we meet and we get a full intake. So we start, before we have any testing, we certainly welcome any external testing that you have. We want to look at that, and we really want to get to know the person.
Like blood tests and stuff?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you've been to another provider, whether it's conventional or functional within the last 6 months or so, we certainly want those results so we can kind of start putting together the puzzle.
Right.
With that said, though, we do a full intake. So we really, really want to get to know the person really well. We talk about sleep. We talk about stress.
Yeah.
We talk about their diet. We talk about
I remember when I did it, it was like an hour and a half.
Yes.
And we just went through the whole history.
I love that so much.
Because we really, really want to get to know the person and
Of
not
course.
just look at the testing and say, I wonder what this person's doing. I wonder, why this test is the way it is, versus really understanding the person and then seeing the test results and being able to put it together.
Yeah. Yeah. What are the most common findings in your practice when it comes to acne? Like when you, especially collectively, when you have all these clients that have acne, what are you most commonly seeing?
So we're most commonly seeing a lot of GI imbalances, whether it's too much bad bacteria, not enough good bacteria, SIBO, H. pylori, candida, we'll get into that. We're also seeing a lot of hormonal imbalances. Often the gut and hormones go hand in hand.
Diana, can I ask you why I notice that a lot of the times you will test gut or recommend testing gut before hormones?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because the hormones are the most downstream system in the body. Okay. So
what does that mean?
Yeah. So if anything is out of balance in the body, the reproductive system is the first system to shut down we're protecting ourselves, right? We don't need to, it's a survival mechanism. We don't need to reproduce if there is massive amounts of inflammation in the gut or if we are insanely stressed, which is why you hear about people being really stressed or under eating and their cycle goes away. Yeah. Right. So oftentimes if we will just run to hormone testing, but it's rare. Yeah. We like to look at the rest of the body and make sure there's nothing else that's directly throwing off the hormones.
Because that has more of an impact on kind of the healing if you're able to get to the deeper root cause.
Exactly.
Meaning hormonal imbalance can sometimes, whilst it's kind of a root cause, there's something behind it, right?
Yes. If we find an imbalance in estrogen or an imbalance in androgens, testosterone, et cetera, the root cause of those imbalances is usually found somewhere else in the body.
So funny, because when we started working together, you had told me that you usually start with the GI map test to like really look at gut health, but we started with the Dutch test. And then now, like a year after that, I did do the GI map test, and I was like, I feel like we should have started here. But it was just because like you really do learn so much. I didn't even realize like all of the things that the gut can tell you. It's really crazy.
It's unusual because someone like you're like, well, my GI tract feels totally fine. Right?
Everything was.
And a lot of people say that. But acne is often, or any kind of skin conditions, honestly, is often an external manifestation of something going on inside.
Right. I was just going to say, one of the biggest quotes you always say whenever we do our trainings is that skin health is a reflection of gut health. So it's like, how can we start there to see the connection? It's crazy.
It actually impacts on your mental health as well, gut, right? There's a huge correlation, which again impacts on skin. It's like there's all these layers.
It's crazy.
Because so many of our neurotransmitters, especially serotonin, the happy hormone, right, is actually made in the gut.
Incredible.
It is? Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Well, that goes back to what we always reference. The founder of Kuma was telling us how if you have negative thoughts, like more negative thoughts will then like decrease the good bacteria in your gut. It like kills it or whatever.
Because there is a real gut-brain connection there.
Yeah, it's so true. Well, speaking of gut, obviously that's one of the main root causes that I'm sure that you see. What do we need to know about the gut as it relates to acne?
Yes. So the gut is very much tied to acne, as we've been saying.
Right.
The main kind of reasons that someone would have acne and therefore inflammation in the gut could be related to an imbalance of good bacteria. Honestly, not enough good bacteria. And that's often tied with the more mood imbalances that we see too. Additionally, we see candida or yeast or fungal overgrowth in the gut, which can manifest as fungal acne, which you guys see all the time.
And how do we know that some of these things are out of balance? Like what are you
feeling or
what do you
seeing
use to test?
What do we use to test?
Yeah.
So we're using stool testing. Specifically, we like to use the GI map stool test.
Right.
So that takes a look at the good bacteria, the bad bacteria, the yeast, fungi, digestive markers. We get a whole picture of how the gut is functioning. And then in addition to that, we can get a good sense based on how your digestion is actually functioning. Are you having daily bowel movements? Are you uncomfortable? Are you noticing gas and bloating? And even beyond that, are there other skin manifestations? Are you feeling super fatigued after meals or just all day? There's plenty of other symptoms that can be tied to GI health as well.
That's so
What would
crazy.
be the most common ones or ones that people should look out for that aren't kind of like, we will ask about bloating and gassiness, but are there other things that can be a symptom of gut health that people may not be aware of?
So very obviously could be anything GI tract related, right? Acid reflux, frequent burping, nausea upon waking, things like that would tell us there's an imbalance in the GI tract. People forget that it's one tube. So anything you notice along that way is honestly very much associated. And then in addition to that, we look at fatigue, we look at skin rashes. We also would want to look at, if you're noticing that your skin is super dry or your hair is falling out, that could be a nutrient absorption issue.
Yeah, those are very common symptoms.
Yeah, and if you're eating all the right things, but you're not absorbing them, then it's just a total waste, unfortunately.
And Mary, we talk about that all the time. Like, you know how a big portion of our community that are struggling with your skin are on paper super healthy.
Yes.
Eating really well, exercising well, but struggling at the highest level. So that can obviously be something that people are missing, because you think you're ticking the boxes.
Right. I think that's why I didn't even consider my gut health when we first were talking, because I was like, I eat so clean. I'm like, don't even that's not, to me it was immediately hormones, because I was like, there's no way that everything else is good. Like I'm eating the best that I can and like really taking care of myself and X, Y, and Z. But I do think that that's often overlooked. Like I had a parasite
I know
for mine, and I just was like, what, how did you get there?
And it's so interesting that you had a parasite, because most people come to me who have GI issues and they're like, I think I have a parasite. And most people do not, despite
That's
what
so
social
funny.
media
So I
may
was like the complete
make you
opposite.
believe. Yes.
That's
versus
so
with
true.
you came to me, you're like, I'm feeling okay. And look, you had a parasite. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so
Speaking
funny.
of social media, what is one of the like biggest myths that you see about gut health or misconceptions that kind of is going around social media?
A really good question.
Because I get tagged in a lot of videos and on like TikTok about acne, and it'll be like, you should use beef tallow, or you should do X, or you should do Y. Are there things that you see on social media? Like, I always think of you, and I actually ask you a lot when people are like self-diagnosing or going on supplements without testing. Like, that's a
Yes.
huge, I'm like, oh my gosh, I wonder what Diana would think of this.
I think a lot of people go on social media and share their own story, and people see themselves in that individual.
Yeah.
And while I think that's really validating and helpful, oftentimes they're not the same. And so people are saying, I did this, I ate this, I followed this diet, and that's not you.
Yeah.
So that's where I really think you have to kind of really focus on the individual and get to know them, get to know their body, get to know where they're from, what they eat, what they ate growing up, right?
There's so many things, right?
There's so many components that
it's
if
like
you
the
just
catch-22 of having all of this information. Like I was saying earlier, it's nice because then we can kind of like help advocate for ourselves and our health. But at the same time, we see all these things and we're immediately like, I have this. I need to do this. X, Y, and Z.
And you can derail depending on what it is that you try. It's so easy. I know this with skincare, to completely derail everything by choosing the wrong thing, you know?
Absolutely. Just like one supplement can totally take you down.
What's your take, speaking of supplements, what's your take on like the acne supplements that are going around? Like I know Clear Stem has one. and a
I
few
am
other
not
people.
anti them. I just think you have to be careful about what you're taking. Like the Clear Stem one is great if higher levels of estrogen is what you're dealing with and you're
But if
not on
it's
an
not,
antidepressant.
Like what if it isn't high estrogen and you are on an antidepressant? Should we be taking something like that?
No, absolutely not. And that's why we really focus on the individual, because if you are on an antidepressant, you could get too much serotonin and have what's known as serotonin syndrome, right? Because we're upregulating that pathway too intensely. And then also, let's say you have low levels of estrogen and actually it's an androgen issue and you start taking something like DIM, you could actually totally lose your period because you're down-regulating estrogen even more.
Yeah,
That's so crazy.
It's important to test, right? Like you just, because
Test,
you
guess.
don't know.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
so true.
And some people get lucky and they take a supplement and it works really, really well.
Right.
But it's the same thing with a lot of the drugs. There's not a lot of testing that goes on before you get on doxycycline.
Well, I was just going to bring up doxy because
gamble.
Right. Because I think a lot of people, especially if it's a gut health issue, I mean, I guess they wouldn't even know in the first place if it's a gut health issue.
Right.
But I do know a lot of the times the first thing is to prescribe some sort of antibiotic for acne specifically. Doxycycline is one of them, correct?
Yes.
Why do you advise maybe not taking something like that or like thinking about it before taking?
So it's a broad spectrum antibiotic. So it's going to kill a lot of the bacteria. And while we would love it just to go after the bad acne causing bacteria, first of all, we don't even know if those are the problem.
Right.
Second of all, it's going to also kill a lot of the good bacteria in the gut.
Right.
Also, if it is helping at all, then to me, that shows us as a broader gut issue and we should take a look at that.
Yeah. Right.
What a lot of people don't realize is acne is not even a bacterial issue. Like we do have a bacterial sensitivity, but we now know that it's inflammation. So it's like if you're taking away, like we all need a certain amount of that acne bacteria. You know, it's not all bad. It's been demonized, but we don't need to be trashing our whole barrier. And specifically targeting, it's kind of the same rationale as targeting oil. These are things that we're more sensitive to, but it's not the real reason why acne-prone people are staying stuck, and the damage that it does in the meantime is more long-term, you know?
That's what I worry about with a lot of the acne suppressants out there is the long-term effects. And I'm sure you guys feel exactly the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, and we'll get into it because when we would do our trainings with you and you would tell us kind of specifically why we don't recommend like a spironolactone or Accutane or Doxy or something, it just really made me be like, oh, okay, that's why. And to me, like your reasonings always made a little bit more sense. Like, you know, I think a lot of people, especially online, especially now with spironolactone, everybody's like, that's the first one to go, or that's the first thing that we're all on. And
because it works for a lot of people.
right.
Yeah.
Right. But
Until
there's
it doesn't.
maybe
Totally.
Or until they want to go off it. Like those are the
No.
two things.
100%.
It's so
Yeah.
funny because it's like I'm 52 now and, started dealing with acne at 12. And there's always like the flavors of the month, like everybody goes through all the different medications. And then, a decade or two down the line, it starts to come out that there's this said issue and that said issue. And it's kind of like the whole thing with suppressants is even beyond like, let's just pretend they don't do any damage at all to your system. My worry too is just the fact that when you want to go off it, because most people do,
Right.
you haven't dealt with the root cause. And so you just have a buildup of the issue. The rebound acne for a lot of these suppressants is ferocious.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a bigger problem on your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know you've said before that another main root cause of acne is nutrient imbalances, and some of that is due to these medications that we're talking about. So let's take Accutane, for example, because that's a big one. Where do you see those nutrient imbalances come through with Accutane and why you might suggest somebody not take it?
Yes. So the first thing we notice for Accutane is just a very imbalanced vitamin A metabolism. So it's just really high dose vitamin A, which can be dangerous long term. And that's why you have to take birth control with it, right? Because you have to make sure you don't get pregnant because that could be dangerous for a fetus. So we worry about that. We also see that Accutane can very much impact the liver, which is why individuals on Accutane are getting their liver enzymes monitored every few weeks or months, right?
Right.
So,
and I know that's another big root cause for acne is just liver detoxification.
exactly.
And like if somebody's able to do it or not.
And that's my biggest concern is that individuals go on Accutane and it may work, but then they go off of it and it doesn't. And then you have an imbalanced vitamin A metabolism. You have all of this liver dysfunction, right? And kind of this damage that was done in the past that we have to undo now to get to the root cause of this.
It's so crazy. Such a crazy drug. Well, and then another one, like we were talking about earlier, was spironolactone.
Yes.
I know a lot of your clients, I'm sure, that you work with are trying to transition off of these acne treatments. What, first of all, are the downsides of spironolactone? It seems like now it's just prescribed with anybody who has a few blemishes. So like what are the downsides that you see on your end and the protocol for transitioning off of it from a nutrition standpoint?
Yes. So the main issues we see with spironolactone is that it depletes nutrients, especially electrolytes like magnesium, which is also depleted with stress. So now you have a stressed individual that's on spironolactone and they're super deficient in B vitamins, magnesium, sodium, etc. So it's it is a diuretic. So it definitely depletes electrolytes there. The other thing we see is just this feeling of being off. And then people just want to get off of it. They just don't feel like themselves.
Yeah.
And then the third thing that's arguably one of the more concerning things is that it can really mess with your other hormones as well. So because
you can't get pregnant when you're on spironolactone, right?
You shouldn't.
Right.
No.
Okay.
People have, but you shouldn't.
Okay.
And you have to get off of it right away. And then there's concerns about the fetus as well. So it's definitely not something that should happen.
Okay.
That being said, spironolactone can throw off a period. So most of my clients on spironolactone don't have regular periods.
I noticed that too.
Yeah. And then when you get off of it, it doesn't usually come right back, right? Because you've been suppressing these hormones for some time now.
Yeah. Well, wait, can we kind of scale back? So even like with spironolactone, what is it? And I know that you said it's a diuretic, but what does that mean?
Yeah, it actually was a blood pressure medication for men that they found on the side, which is honestly how a lot of drugs have been kind of discovered in some way, right? To work for reducing acne. So then it was like, oh, this is a pretty safe, acne reducer. And what it does specifically, beyond like the more systemic effects, right, that reduce blood pressure and therefore can make people feel dizzy and kind of its diuretic effects, would be that it blocks, how do I say this without getting too technical, the 5-alpha reductase pathway, which is what makes hormones like testosterone super androgenic.
Okay.
And so that is a common pathway that we see elevated in individuals with acne. But what we do is figure out why that's elevated in the first place and then downregulate that versus taking a drug that will block it for a short period of time, but then has a bunch of side effects in the meantime.
Would you say too, Diana, because this is what I see a lot, that so much of adult acne is not androgen driven, and sometimes people are just put on things like spironolactone to see if it works, and it's not even something that they have no signs of like androgen dominance or anything like that, and it ends up being something completely different. You know, like we're working at the moment, we have this wonderful new microbiome balancing serum called Civ.
Yes.
And they kind of do a GI map of the skin like you do of the gut. And exactly the same thing. Finding out that everybody's, you know, like skin microbiome is different from each other and needs different things. But that often the things that are kind of, you know, typically what cause a lot of acne is not always the case for everybody. So it's like, I always get nervous that I find with these trends that everybody's just put, like, it's almost like the route is antibiotics. When that stops working, antibiotics and the pill. And if it persists, Spiro. And when those don't work, Accutane. And just round and round like that, you know, but it's not always androgens.
Totally. And that's where you should look at other symptoms and do labs, right? So first of all, you should test. But second of all, you should look at, are you noticing hair loss, especially kind of, you know, up here? Are you noticing that you're feeling really oily everywhere? Are you noticing kind of this sweating sensation or a lot of sweating that tends to have an odor, right? There are other signs to look out for other than just acne.
Now, we have something in aesthetics called face mapping. And it's not, I don't think it's not science backed, but I've seen it so many times that I can visually, like with androgen driven acne, it's always like in a beard shaped pattern. Like it seems to be like chin, jawline, sometimes down the neck. And I remember in one of my courses that they said that there's just a lot more DHT receptors, like androgen receptors in that area. Like that all acne has some hormonal element to it. But if you get it predominantly in that area, it's because there's a lot more androgen activity. But if it's like gut related, I always see that it's the person's got a lot more inflammation. It's always angrier, redder. The acne is more full face, or, you know, even can be more dominant here rather than here. Is that something that you see when you're working with clients as well? Like it's almost like when they walk on the door sometimes, not always, you can, before you even read their information, you're like, oh, I have a feeling I know what's going on here.
100% we use face mapping the same way that you do. We ask if it's cystic, where it's located, no question that androgenic or hormonal acne tends to be more jawline. Gut-related acne tends to be, I find, in the cheeks and then also on the forehead, 100%. And then the type of it, right? You can tell if it's more fungal and small. You can tell if it's more inflamed. No question that you can take a look and have a good sense. Also, on the point you made earlier, I want to point out that you were saying that individuals just get put on spironolactone. And it's so funny you say that, because every single time someone was on spironolactone in the past, the first question I ask is, did it work? And the answer I get every single time is either, no, it didn't, but I don't want to use it, or yes, it really worked, but I don't want to go back on it. And I'm always like, don't worry, my recommendation is not going to be put back on it, but it's going to help me understand what was causing it in the first place.
Because if it had no effect, then I know it's not androgens. Can I ask you, because I see this often as well, and I think I know the answer to it, but I want to get your advice. I notice with clients that get a lot of acne in this area, very inflamed, like pustular around the mouth, that tends to be, to me, I see they're under a lot of stress, that they don't eat breakfast in the morning and they often just drink coffee and don't eat for a really long time. Sometimes they just make a switch and have breakfast, adding a little bit of protein and delaying the coffee, and the acne clears up. Why is that?
100% because it's a blood sugar issue, or they're completely and utterly related, is the cortisol issue. Blood sugar and cortisol are married. And so usually it's a blood sugar issue that's causing a cortisol imbalance, but that coffee first thing on an empty stomach just spikes the cortisol, and then your blood sugar has dipped overnight, and because your cortisol is increasing, that brings up your blood sugar along with it. And you're now on this blood sugar roller coaster. And we know that cortisol increases sebum production. So that's a perfect storm.
So it does, right? Because I'm like, so many times I've had clients come back after a couple of months and be like, I'm just breaking out less. I can't believe this. So what's your take on intermittent fasting then? Like not eating in the morning.
For individuals that are premenopausal, I am very much anti. For postmenopausal, we'll discuss.
Oh,
well, okay. So, but does premenopausal include me, like young people?
Yes.
Okay.
So I should have been less technical.
No, because I was like,
because it is a huge. I see that
if you have a period, or you should have a period.
Okay.
With people that are like super fit,
yes.
A lot of people love intermittent fasting,
right.
And I worry about that in relation to the blood sugar.
A lot of them don't have
because
period.
Our cortisol. Speaking of, obviously, stress is a huge thing. Our cortisol is already like increased in the mornings, right? Like we get like naturally, like we get that cortisol spike because it's like what wakes us up. But are what you saying that with especially coffee on an epistemic with coffee is like a cortisol spiker, I guess. Will that just like increase it more? Like I'm thinking of the chart that you've shown me before. It just like goes even higher.
Yes, it will be off the charts high.
And then food, if you had it with food, it would kind of help like stabilize. Is that what
because you're stabilizing your blood sugar at the same time.
Okay.
I imagine it like a fire and you're just putting gasoline on already a fire and it's just going
yeah, that's so true.
And then acne is fire, because I always use that analogy with my clients is like, you have to find every single way that you can in your power to put out the fire,
Yeah,
but
that's
I wondered
true.
about that because I do know that a lot of our clients too are super into fitness and wellness. And there is that, intermittent fasting is something that's super common in the industry. And I wonder how it relates to skin health,
Yeah, and a lot of people with like any of the diet trends tend to try something which has made them healthier and then they swear by that trend. But in reality, any steps to make your body healthier will help. And it didn't have to be as extreme as intermittent fasting. But also a lot of the individuals who, and not everybody, right? There are plenty of people that can get away with intermittent fasting. They're totally fine. Their skin is clear, right? They have no other issues. But there are individuals that I've seen that work out way too much, right? They're increasing their cortisol, undereat, aka or they're intermittent fasting, which often results in a hormonal imbalance. And how you can see that is they have irregular cycles.
And I always look to, and I'm sure you do as well, a lot of these people are like in finance or crazy stressful jobs.
Already stressed.
And then they unwind, a high intensity exercise. It's just like you go through their day. Like one of the things that I love to do is I'll start with, even if my clients are on the right PT, skincare and all of that sort of thing, it's like go through their whole day. And sometimes when they lay it out for you, it's like, oh, your system is on fire because there's nothing that's stress relieving in the whole day, but people don't realize that. It's almost like too, I think when you are, Mary, you a little bit like this, like you're a go person. It's your norm. So it's almost
and
like
I also think it's that point that like your body doesn't recognize the difference between good stress and bad stress. So something like for me, a run or something like that, it's like still causing stress on your body. It could be in my head, a stress reliever, but like your body doesn't know that difference. So especially to your point of like over exercising or under eating or whatever, like doing that so much, your body just like stays in the fight or flight.
And you almost, that is your norm. You know? Like, it's like
and then we live in New York where that is more than the norm.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you can be in situations like, to our point about being mothers to young children, there are situations that you can't change. Like you are just in that is your life and you're on high. But like what are some easy things that people can do to deal with if they know that their lifestyles are stressful or things like that? Like what are some really easy things that people can do?
Yeah, so some easy things that people can do. And I say this is easy. As a mother, some of these are not easy. So you kind of got to pick and choose, right? Like the first thing I'd say is get good quality sleep. Not always easy as a mom. But if you can do it, that should be prioritized over a 5-6 a.m. workout.
Yeah.
100%. Second thing is making sure you're well hydrated. So while individuals tend to be running around, They forget to drink their water. Water bottles are trendier now, so people are carrying them around and staying on top of it. But if you're not, that's something else that can completely help your skin barrier and just help you stay healthy.
What's a really, I always want to encourage clients that aren't eating in the morning. What would be like a really super easy breakfast that someone could have that will help balance the blood sugar, but is really fast?
That was what I was going to say, is have 20 grams of breakfast within 1 hour of waking.
Protein?
20 grams of breakfast, 20 grams of protein within an hour of waking, 2 hours if you have to, but ideally an hour. So what that could look like depends on what's easy for the individual. It could be 3 hard-boiled eggs. It could be scrambled eggs, right? It could be any kind of eggs, but I would say have 3 so you get enough protein. Because only 2 is going to get you closer to 12 grams. Another thing could be having a pre-made protein shake or making a protein shake, which can be super, super simple. And I always tell my clients, if you're running out the door in the morning, put everything in the blender, add the nut milk or the water in the morning and blend and run out the door. Other easy, quick breakfast could be having overnight oats, having chia seed pudding, but adding some sort of protein in there, whether that's a lot of nuts or seeds, which also have good omega-3s for your skin, or adding some sort of protein or collagen in there just to boost the protein.
I wish that we could, when I look at a lot of other cultures that have more dinner-like things for breakfast.
Totally. That's always on my list, is like eat dinner or lunch for breakfast.
I'm teaching my daughter like grabbing leftovers and having some chicken with, like half an avocado and...
That's so funny because I'm so not like that.
Most people are not.
I am like, I have my like 3 rotating breakfasts that I just do. So then, but it's so true. It's like, why not just have a turkey sandwich for breakfast? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
well, in Japan, when my brother was living in Japan, when his skin got absolutely gorgeous, he was having like cooked fish in the morning with broth, but it's you've got to grow up with it, Or
right, I was going to say,
train yourself. That's the thing. This is the thing that I say to clients that have zero appetite in the morning, that if you can't stomach a full breakfast, even if you just start a little bit, right? Like, and you will build up to the 3 eggs. Like, just have a bite of something in the morning before you have your coffee. Like a small win over delaying is still better than nothing.
Totally. Anything is better than nothing. We are wired to crave sweet in the morning.
Listen,
because our blood sugar is low, right? We haven't eaten all night. That's just, I feel like that's kind of how a lot of us are. But I always challenge people to try to have a savory breakfast and see how that impacts your day.
Maybe one day I'll get into it, but I am I do make sure I add protein or have some sort of protein to balance it out, but I'm always, having a sweet breakfast. Well, speaking of food, I feel like that's such a hot topic when it comes to acne. Everybody immediately is like, I cut out dairy, I cut out this, I cut out that. And it's like always, food related in some way, in addition to a lot of the other things that we talk about. But in your professional guidance, especially being a registered dietitian, how do you navigate this and eating obviously for optimal skin health while also not demonizing food? Because I think that, at least for me in my experience, like I try to cut out everything and whatever. And then that alone just was so noisy. And I feel like it kind of had an adverse effect almost, because then you're so stressed about like the food that you're eating that it's like, even if you cut anything out, it won't help. So in your professional opinion, what would you advise?
Yeah. So the stress of not eating a food is worse than just eating the food. That's always what I tell people. But most people are coming to me and they're like, tell me exactly what to do. I'll try anything, right? Yeah. So with that being said, depending on the client and their issues, I will always recommend doing a stool test along with any sort of short-term elimination. I say that because if food is inflammatory for you, oftentimes that's an indicator that there's something going on in the gut, and the food is not always the issue. Don't get me wrong. There are plenty of people that feel better without certain foods. Dairy is a big one because dairy actually has been studied to show that there is a link to acne.
Yeah, right.
That being said, some individuals just notice that certain foods are more inflammatory for them. And so what we might do is just experiment and see if any of those foods are inflammatory. And while we heal the gut, for a short period of time, we keep those foods out, which always sounds super daunting, but it's not hard at all when you actually start to see results.
Yeah, it's
That
so
being
true.
said, once the gut's in a better place, oftentimes individuals can reintroduce those foods. Dairy and gluten are often two really big ones. And they can play around and see how they feel with them, right? Gluten in America is different than gluten overseas. So
why is that? Is that because of how we process it?
yes, that's a big one. Yeah, it's so much more processed here. There's a lot more gluten actually added. And then also the glyphosate, which is the Roundup or herbicide that we use on the actual wheat, could be actually more of a problem than the wheat itself, right?
I've heard that.
Yeah. So
I
that being
that.
said, like it's hard because we don't want to tell somebody to completely eliminate foods, and that's not the goal here.
Right.
But an experiment can often be helpful.
I was just going to say,
dairy specifically, we do find that individuals that can be the most, like if I just met someone on the street and they were like, what should I do for my acne? I'd say, well, dairy often can cause it. Like, check it out. Right.
Right.
That being said, there are different kinds of dairy. So there's A1 casein, which is a protein, or A2, right? A2 is often found in like sheep's and goat's milk. A1 is often the predominant protein in cow's milk. And so individuals can play around, and we find that A1 is more inflammatory than A2.
So that's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
So kind of the Mediterranean, like more feta and things like that, like not, is a better choice for, say, a highly acne prone person than a cow's milk.
Yes. And I'd say you want to experiment, because there are plenty of our clients that eat plenty of dairy products and they're totally fine. That's not what's impacting their acne. But there are some where it's an easy fix.
Is there something that you can say if you wanted to enjoy something like dairy, or you were having a sweet breakfast like what Mary's talking about, is there something that you can add to the meal to lessen the effect of said thing, like to kind of lower the spike of inflammation? Like,
I would say you want to treat the gut, because that's where the inflammation is lying.
Yeah.
But from just a simple dietary perspective, making sure that there's a lot of protein, right? That's where that 20 grams comes in. That'll certainly combat some of the blood sugar spike you might get with just, a fully fruit or sugar-filled breakfast. From a dairy perspective, unfortunately not. Because it's not usually a lactate. It's not usually a lactose, which is the sugar in dairy issue. Some people are lactose intolerant, but that's usually not what's causing the acne. And so taking something like lactate isn't going to combat that.
Or mixing like healthy fats, or there's nothing that you can kind of do in a meal to lessen the effect.
I mean, omega-3s are super helpful for the skin, but if you are specifically reacting to dairy, unfortunately, no.
Yeah.
I think it's just taking that. I know for when we worked together, back to that, we did the 10-day detox. Like that was one of the first things that we did. And, it could be hard, to think of like cutting things out or whatever, because you don't want to be in that negative mindset and everything. But I do feel like thinking of it as what you were saying, as an experiment, like thinking, okay, I'm just going to do it and we're just going to see, and kind of changing your mind. So it's phrased like that, as opposed to like, we're cutting this out because it's bad. It's like, well, we don't even know if it's bad, but like, let's actually, like, with the guidance of a professional, actually try this out.
Yeah, see if it works for you. And the biggest flaw I see, or the biggest error I see with individuals who are doing elimination diets, is that they don't reintroduce the foods.
Yeah. Well, walk us through that. So back to that, we did the 10-day detox or 10-day reset. I don't know what you would call it, but what is that like?
Yeah. So if we do a 10-day elimination diet, which is often kind of like the shortest amount of time, we'll quickly eliminate foods and see how you feel and get a sense for how things are changing.
And we're eliminating dairy, gluten.
Depends on the person.
Really? Okay.
But everybody usually, if I'm doing this, would eliminate gluten, dairy, soy, corn, and alcohol.
And peanut butter, right?
So for you, is nuts.
Yeah, it was peanut butter.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. Because I really talk to the person and see what we think they're eating a lot of, what they think could be inflaming them. People have a really good sense.
Yeah.
It's almost like, rather than looking at it, because I always think about, in our job, purging is the negative thing that happens that actually ends up leading to healing. Elimination, it's more that you're playing detective, right? Like you're taking things out to try and like zero in on the issue rather than just stay in the dark.
Exactly.
But there is a set end to it, meaning the end goal is not for you to, have eliminated all of these different food groups, but find out what the issue is and then tweak it almost like a soundboard, like, when you
100%.
making things, what is your balance?
Yes. And then once the gut's in a good place, reintroducing these foods for most people shouldn't be as big of a problem.
Well, given everything, I feel like we've just gone around the board and we could just, there's so many places that we can deep dive in this conversation. But what are some quick wins that people can really take away from if they're just starting their journey, or especially when it relates to their diet? Like, what would you kind of go to for that?
There's a few. We've actually covered a few of them. So getting 20 grams of protein at breakfast time within an hour of waking, that's a big one. Second one is hydrate. Ideally half your body weight in ounces of water per day.
Are
which
you
can
still
feel like a
saying
lot.
to put electrolytes into your water?
For most people, yes.
Okay.
I think
What's your favorite at the moment?
I love, it depends if you like and need salt. If so, I love LMNT. I also love the Paleo Valley electrolytes.
Okay. I'm doing trace minerals at the moment.
I
Is
love that
good?
one too. Yes, that's a great one. That's perfect.
There you go.
I use that for a lot of clients actually.
Okay. Good.
Specifically for acne. What else? Getting good quality sleep. Getting rid of foods that don't suit you, meaning foods that you just don't feel good after eating. So whether that's a lot of processed foods, ultra processed foods, fried foods, things like that, where you just walk away feeling like that didn't really suit me. And then lastly would be getting in omega-3s every single day. So omega-3 fatty acids, meaning chia seeds, hemp seeds, flax seeds, small fatty fish. This could be to some people exciting, to others not so much. Salmon, mackerel, herring, anchovies, or taking an omega-3 supplement.
I was just going to say.
Yeah, I was going to say, or taking an omega-3 supplement if you don't want to eat those seeds or eat fish.
Do you have a favorite omega-3?
I love the Carlson Maximum omega-3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to
Just
know.
like nice, high, potent dose.
Yeah. Do you like cod liver oil?
I love that too. So that addresses, because there's vitamin A in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it for the vitamin A and the vitamin D. Like I'm a cod liver girl. Me and Noosh.
That's great.
Yeah. Well, what would you say? I know it's kind of in line with the wins, but what would you say is your biggest recommendation when it comes to boosting just general skin health that a lot of people, especially acne prone people, overlook?
This is going to be not so gratifying to some, but not overlooking the basics. The basics are hard.
Yeah.
People like to find the one thing they can hack or the thing that they can take. What we forget is making sure you're focusing on the basics, right?
Yes.
So that's some of the things that I already said.
Yeah.
But making sure that stress is not an issue. And if it is, figuring out how to manage it. If you can't get out of that job or relationship, then find something that helps you manage that stress, right? If you are not eating appropriately every 3 to 4 hours, keeping your blood sugar stable, that's a huge component here. If you're not well hydrated, you're not sleeping, I feel like a broken record, but those are the biggest things that I find to be overlooked.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. I mean, Haslaw's our hierarchy of needs. You got to do the basics before you could do, the self-actualization work. It's so true.
Yes. But then from there, we can really dive into what's missing.
Right.
Because I do feel if most people just did the basics, there'd be actually a lot less complaints. But once you do that, we can dive a little bit deeper and really get to that next level to figure out what's going on.
You know what it is? The basics aren't sexy.
Yeah. Oh, no.
So true.
We want to do sometimes I know even just with little things like with clients where I'll say, have some warm water with lemon in the morning and it won't get done. And I'll tease them and say, if I told you that this would be beneficial if you climbed a ladder, hung upside down and drank the lemon water, you would do it.
Yep.
But the fact that it's just so simple, in your mind, you're not giving it any value because it's too simple. We don't place high value on the simple stuff. I mean, my big thing is sleep. Mary knows this. I know how important it is. And I still struggle with this major basic health thing, you know. But then I'll go and do all these other highfalutin things for my health. And it's like, dude, just stop scrolling on your phone and get into bed and go to sleep, you know?
It's true. The basics are the hardest.
Yeah.
It's really fun to go to a meditation class where they essentially put you into a trance, right?
And sound bites
and that is all beneficial. Like there's
It's
only
like
upside to these things, but I think sometimes we look really hard to find that when it's something that we can do easily at home.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's like you telling me not to wear like pore clogging, check your ingredients in your makeup or whatever. Like it is the basics.
That's always, whenever we get the complex cases at work, the first thing that I do is go back to the basics. And it's usually something there that's being missed. It's not something complex, you know?
I also think like with all of this, there's an element of recognizing that you are an acne prone person. Like we are, at least for me, like as an acne prone person, obviously you too as well.
Yeah.
Like when we do have high levels of inflammation and everything, most often that's how our bodies register to show the signs of inflammation is within our skin. So,
and we're more sensitive to it.
Right. And people don't want to admit that they like get acne or have acne or whatever, you know, it's not super cute to say, but it's so true.
You know,
you downplay it a lot.
You just want to be you don't want to be the party pooper. Like, you know how you were saying to me when you had your girly weekend and you brought all your skincare and it was like, oh, Mary has to do a 20-minute routine. And you're like, I have to do it.
It's so
like,
true.
That is, you know, there are certain things. It's like you have to get to a point in life where you know that, you know what, I have a condition. Being acne prone means that I have this special relationship with inflammation. I'm more sensitive. I've got to be more careful than the average person. That's just what it is. It's no fault of mine. It's the genetic cards I got dealt with. But there's so many things that I can do. And to your point, Diana, it's like, it's the simple stuff that needs to be the foundation and be consistent, you know?
Yeah. But that's so true what you said about you're kind of genetically dealt with this. That's true of everything.
Yeah.
And so I always feel like my sessions, we get down to this one thing, which is that we have to, for specific conditions, whether it's acne, whether it's autoimmunity, right? Whether it's just general GI discomfort, unfortunately, we have to work one step harder than maybe your friend does, right? Just to get you to a place that feels comfortable because we are genetically, that's the hands that we were dealt.
Totally.
Yeah.
I feel like we went this, that, and everywhere in this episode. We could have like dived even deeper into so many topics. So we'll definitely have to have a part 2. Like there's so much more.
There's going to be
we just touched the surface on hormones and acne.
So
we can really get deeper. But where can everybody find you? How can people work with you? Like everybody needs to have a Diana in their life.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for having me. So if you want to get in touch with us, I have Casey and Ziba on my team. Many of you guys know them well.
Love them.
Yeah. They're phenomenal. But you can book a discovery call, which I recommend for everybody who is remotely interested. Yes, remotely interested in working with us. Quick call just to get to know us, you know, make sure that we're a good fit. And then from there, you can reach out to us at our email at info@dianaorchantnutrition.com or at our website, dianaorchantnutrition.com, or on Instagram, do.nutrition.
Well, you've got a lot of educational material.
So much on Instagram. You need to follow.
Yeah, we try.
I'll have all the details in the show notes so people can just click link and all of that. But Diana, it was so amazing to have you on. Thank you so much for being our first guest.
Thanks for having me.
Look back on this and be like, oh,
no,
milestone.
like I'm already plotting and planning part 2. So this was amazing.
Thank you guys.
so much.
It was such an honor to be here.
Yay. See you guys next week.